Shalom, everyone. This morning in Mishnah class, we had a very interesting connection between the laws of Nazir and the laws of kosher. We learned that the calculation of 1/60th to be annulled if something unkosher fell into the kosher stew or meal is calculated by the shank bone of the guilt offering. Which is 1/60th of the sheep or the ram. Sorry, ram. So in the same way, some of these laws we learned already before, but the timing of when we eat the meal of Shabbat was actually part of two different discussions in the Talmud, one in Hilchot Shabbat and one in Hilchot Pesach. So for Shabbat, it's talking about the later part of the afternoon. So I think we mentioned some of this Mishnah when we were learning the laws of Mincha and Mariv. So a person should not sit before the barber when it's already time for Mincha until he prays. And the Talmud gives a very interesting explanation, which maybe today will not be applicable because they have more than one pair of scissors. But it says Shemei Shaver Azug, that maybe the scissors will break, and then he'll be too embarrassed to walk out in the street with half his hair done, which I can imagine. So that's why you should daven first mincha, and then you can go to the barber. In the same way, when it says here a bathhouse, the Talmud explains that that's actually talking about a sauna, and not to the bursaki, to somebody who does the tanning of skins. Velo le'echol, and you should not start eating, meaning a full meal before the time of mincha, because you might get drunk and forget the mincha or be under the influence when you. And then Rabbi Yoshua adds that when the time of mincha comes, you're not even allowed to taste something, like not even a snack. I'm not sure that that's the halacha today, but we're talking really about Sudah Gdolah. And last but not least, how is this related to Shabbat? Rav Papa tells us what the actual timing of people was to eat. And since there was no argument about it, that is how we paskin. And so this same Braita, this same Tanur Rabbanan, is brought in Pesachim, which we'll see in a second. Tanur Rabbanan, Sha'ar Rishona Ma'achal Udim. So the eating in the first hour of the morning is the time of eating of Ludim, who are members of a nation of cannibals. It's not the proper translation of today, and it does sound like the city of Lod, which definitely was not that barbaric. So we don't know, but that the explanation of the translation here is that they are so ravenous and hurried to eat. So even the first hour of the day, so during the first hour after sunrise, Shniya Ma'achal Istim, the second hour is a time of robbers because they're going to do their things, and they don't want to stop for lunch. Shlishit Ma'achal Yorshin, the third hour is the time of eating for heirs, meaning people who don't have to go to work at all, and that's actually how we rule for the time of Kriyat Shema, that princes and people who are stay at home and don't even have to go to work that's the time for Shema. Revi'it Ma'achal Po'alim, the fourth hour is the time for workers, and Chamishit Ma'achal Kol Adam, the fifth hour is the time for every other person. So this is going back to the morning, even though we were talking first in the Mishnah about Mincha. So in Psachim, it's more relevant because of the time to end eating chametz and on Erev Pesach. And so Rava says, Gzera mishum yom ha'meunan, that we are more stringent because it might be a cloudy day and you think that it's only the fourth hour, but it's really the fifth hour already. Again, this was a time when they didn't have clocks and watches, and they could know, exactly when is the end time. And so the rabbis say, we shouldn't eat in the fourth hour either because it might be um, a cloudy day. And by the way, the halacha today is that we stop eating in the fourth hour and we have to end the burning by the end of the fifth hour. So, sorry, by the beginning of the fifth hour. And so Rav Papa says, Arba Zman Seuda Lakoli. So from this we learn, based on this compromise, that the time to eat lunch is the fourth hour. And so going back to the laws of Shabbat, just so doesn't the other two sources I brought are from the Sefer HaChinuch and from the Rambam, who talk about when a poel, a worker, is should eat their meal. So even if they're at the top of the tree cutting, picking fruit, they should take a break and go down and eat properly, not standing up or risking their life. And the same thing we learned about Shema. Um, and so now we'll learn the actual halacha about, I think it's this window, the halacha about the time of, no, it's not this window. Um, the time of the meals of Shabbat. So, why can't I find it? Sorry about that. That is very weird. Oh, here it is. Okay. Sorry, bear with me. Okay, so the parameters of mitzvah. So basically, the three meals of Shabbat, which we mentioned yesterday, are supposed to be, the first meal is at night, because the Jewish day starts at night. Second meal is at the fourth hour, like we just discussed in the Mishnah and the Braita of Shabbat and Psachim. And the third meal, after the time of the Mincha Gedolah starts, which is half an hour Zmanit, after midday until Shkia. So here's how I explain it. There are two mitzvot pertaining to the Shabbat meal. One is oneg, the mitzvah to delight in Shabbat, as it is written, "Call Shabbat a delight" in Yeshayahu, like we learned yesterday. Oneg is fulfilled primarily through the meals, but snacks and a Shabbat nap are also part of it. The second mitzvah is to partake three meals. The sages saw this hinted at in various verses. And the main verse that we learned it is the one that I told you that some people say as the kiddush for the third meal, where it says the word hayom three times in the context of eating. Ichluhu hayom, meaning that you should eat today. And since the word hayom is mentioned three times, that's the simplest hint that we're supposed to eat three meals. But that also teaches us that during the weekday, there were only two meals. There was one at night where the whole family would sit together, and there was one sometime in the morning, depending on when people were, what kind of work people were doing. So we already saw that the poalim, the workers in the field or in all kinds of factories, would eat in the fourth or fifth hour, and that would get them through the whole day. They would start working right after Shachris if they were Jewish, after the morning service, and then they would break around, let's say, nowadays it would be around 11 o'clock, take a lunch proper. Sometimes it was actually from the crops. That's what's discussed in Maimonides, that you're not allowed to prevent your worker from eating fruit or grain while they're harvesting or collecting. And so, and then just two meals a day. The idea of Shabbat is that we add a third meal before sunset to show us that we are eating a special meal for Shabbat. The only time, and this is not discussed here, it's discussed in Yom Tov, is if Erev Yom Tov is Shabbat, like it will be this year for Pesach, we're not supposed to eat a big meal for Shalosh Shuris, because then we will not have the appetite to eat the Yom Tov meal. So those things have to be taken into consideration. And so Rabbi Melamed concludes, the first meal is held on Friday night, the second on Shabbat morning before midday, and the third on Shabbat afternoon from half seasonal hour after midday until Shkia. If one eats the third meal prior to this, he has not fulfilled his obligation. So there's a lot of Sephardi communities that they daven on Shabbos morning very early at like 7 or 7:30, and then they eat Kiddush. They have to make sure that that Kiddush is not with bread, because if it is, then their third meal, which is around 1 o'clock, will still be before the midday, and so they're not allowed to do that. Um, one who did not eat dinner on Friday night should still eat 3 meals on Shabbat's day. If one was unable to eat the second meal before midday, he should eat 2 meals afterwards. For some maintain that the timing of the meals is not critical, and b'diavad one may rely upon them. And we'll learn more about that for the third meal. And let's just conclude. Even though eating sparingly is generally a positive character trait, on Shabbat it is a mitzvah to eat heartily and to sit down for the meal. It is not considered gluttonous since it is for a mitzvah. There's a very interesting Rashi that some people translate as you don't gain any calories on Shabbat. It's in the Gemara in Eruvin. That's what I was always told. I'm not sure that that's the simple understanding of that Rashi. However, one should not overeat because overeating leads to exhaustion and depression. As for those who stuff themselves, fill up, become tired, fall asleep, and do not study Torah, they do not get any credit for this mitzvah, and they are not making Shabbat enjoyable. Instead, they are just pleasing their gullets. And so we'll stop here. Recording.